Call of Duty now has its first ever raid, which is a weird sentence to say because it's kind of had raids for over a decade, just in the form of Easter eggs in the Call of Duty Zombies mode. If we cycle the clock back to 2010, 2011, you had these Easter eggs appearing, which were hidden quests that you weren't handheld through and that most people didn't even know that were there. You get a team together, you cycle through a series of steps, and as the years progressed, that turned into a series of steps with mini bosses and damage checks and boss fights. We've had movement puzzles, we've had logic puzzles, we've had ciphers, we've had all sorts of secrets, and in some cases, we've even had kind of raid rewards in the form of some of the Easter egg rewards that we've had. But this has all been bad news as far as Activision's concerned. I say that somewhat facetiously, but bear with me here. You see, back in the day, it was all lovely. You'd play an Easter egg on a new map that you had just purchased in a new map pack. But that business model has gone now. It's disappeared. We're game as a service, battle pass focused. And the Zombies maps, see Cold War and Vanguard as recent examples of this, are just part of the ongoing content model for the game. You buy the game and you get access to all this stuff as it rolls out over the year. So Activision, by doing this, have lost a really big driver of income that they used to just earn through selling map packs with Zombies maps in them. But maybe they've just replaced it with microtransactions, right? That's meant to be how the game as a service, live service model works. Gobblegum was certainly popular in Black Ops 3, like definitely very much so, and they were really integral to playing the Zombies mode for a lot of people. But again, as time's gone by, Black Ops 4, people didn't really interact with that system. Elixirs, who the hell used those? And nowadays, there isn't really anything that is specific to the Zombies mode driving purchases of microtransactions. Sure, you might want to buy a weapon bundle or something because you like the camo, but chances are you're buying that because you want to use it in Warzone, and the group of people that are only buying it for Zombies are very, very small compared to the other rest of the player base playing the other modes. So that monetization model has also kind of taken a back seat for Zombies. Interesting, okay. So what does that leave us with? There's the hope that by playing Zombies, you might funnel people into other modes of the game where they will be more incentivized to spend their money because the things are dangling right in front of them as they do so. But other than that funnel, there isn't really a lot going on, and so Zombies isn't really a driver of monetization in the way that it once was. Zombies Chronicles, perfect example, came out for Black Ops 3, 8 classic maps that were just remastered for that game, and it was, at the time, the highest selling DLC on the PlayStation Store ever. That made Activision a lot of money, but they can't do that now because that content would just be free. Enter Modern Warfare 2, a game with no Zombies mode, but an answer to Zombies, a PvE mode that isn't just another Spec Ops mission, which puts you through similar challenges, steps, boss fights, etc., like a Zombies map Easter egg might do, except this time we're fighting Russian soldiers as opposed to kind of infected, mutated corpses. It's a step to kind of try and bridge that gap, I think. You had Zombies over here, right? And the people that played Zombies loved Zombies. And you had MP and Warzone and that stuff over here, and they love that stuff. But in the middle, there's this sort of void, and to actually get people to cross that boundary has been pretty difficult. Outbreak was a really good attempt at doing so, and I think that it was really successful. But by taking the Zombies out of the Zombies mode and just replacing them with stuff that is much more familiar to all the people on this side of the fence that just play Warzone and MP, means that that sort of central no man's land experience is a little bit easier to understand, a little bit easier to go, okay, I already shoot bots in multiplayer. Yeah, that's you're the bot. So just doing this here makes total sense to me. And oh, I'm being given kind of quest steps to do now? Well, fair enough. I guess, again, it sort of makes sense because it feels like a Spec Ops mission rather than feeling like some kind of insane satanic ritual to summon a demon and take over the universe, like it does in Zombies. And if these raids are popular, it wouldn't surprise me at all if a lot of development resources and developers specifically who have worked on Zombies in the past end up getting put onto the raids team to flesh that out as much as they can. I mean, there are folks that worked on Infinite Warfare Zombies that are now working directly on this raid and on future raids as well. And that'll only keep happening if they're well received and if it seems to be kind of serving that purpose that Activision is looking for. The question is, though, is Atomgrad, this first raid that we've just received, actually any good? And I think that that sort of splits into a few different branches, that question. Is it good enough to actually match Zombies Easter eggs? Is it good enough to entertain multiplayer and Warzone players? And is it good enough to justify the 5 raid model that COD has doubled down on and said that they're going to do for Modern Warfare 2? To explore that question, let me walk you through the flow of the experience jumping into a raid for the first time in Call of Duty. That's where we'll begin our tale today. If you are an unaware player who just jumps onto the game once a week, twice a week, whatever, with your friends. You're not on Twitter. You're not watching the Call of Duty YouTube channel. You just hop on, play a couple games with your mates, and log off. You probably don't even know that the raid exists. This is flaw number one with this raid rollout. It's right at the bottom of the menu in the Spec Ops tab, and that makes sense because it's a Spec Ops mission. But the problem is that you ain't gonna be scrolling down there if you just want to jump on Warzone. Why would you search at the bottom and go, oh, what's this thing that's locked and I can't even do it? No, you're not gonna get that far. You're gonna see that Shipment is in the game now. You're gonna jump on that, start grinding out your honey badger, and never look back. So from the offset, I think that there's an issue here with the way that the game funnels players towards this particular activity. So that's the unaware player. What about the people that are aware? They're on Twitter, they're subscribed to MrRoflWaffles just like you are, right? Right? Those sorts of players jumped in and knew that they needed to get a raid key. There are 3 published ways of getting those. One was exfilling from a game of DMZ in the final chopper with 30 grand, which would take about half an hour. So if you were trying to get in there quickly, you didn't really want to do that. Another was getting top 20 in Warzone, which was a bit of a gamble. So you might not want to do that. So I opted for the third option, which was to complete a daily challenge, which grants you your raid assignment. Now, again, this is where player flow and the funnel of getting people into the raid becomes a problem once again. I had my final bonus challenge, my bonus mission available in my daily challenges, and I did that on purpose because I was saving it so that I could do that and get my raid assignment from it. It was just to complete low profile and get 3 stars, so I did that, stepped out of the activity, and I had no raid assignment. Similarly, there were people in my stream who were jumping in, trying to do daily challenges. They were doing all sorts of challenges in multiplayer and in Spec Ops. And every time, they would get back to the main menu and go, wait a minute, I didn't get anything. So I just assumed, oh, maybe it's bugged or whatever. And I jumped into Warzone to get top 20 instead. I did that. I completed my match. I waited for credits to roll. I was looking the entire time, trying to see in the little XP pop-up, does it say that I got a raid assignment key? In the post-game lobby, does it say that I got a raid assignment key? Didn't say it anywhere. I just had to know that I got one. And then when I went back to the raid entry in the menus, it said that I now had the key, but it never popped up anywhere. So again, I could have no idea that I even got it and just jump into another Warzone match thinking, oh, I didn't get it for some reason. I've got to do it again. Visibility needs work here. They really need to sort this out. And part of the reason why this is worth a bit of focus here and worth spending some time thinking about is that it actually betrays an underlying issue, I think, with raid assignments themselves. Why do they exist? There are a few reasons why you could hypothesize that Call of Duty might want to do this instead of just letting you into the raid. One obvious one that every single dev at the studio would surely say is a good idea is to try and cross-pollinate the modes. You want people moving from different modes in the game so that they don't only play Warzone. In an ideal world, they play a bit of Warzone, but here and there they might play Spec Ops and they might jump into DMZ on occasion. And then that way, they get used to playing all of the different arms of Call of Duty, and Call of Duty assimilates into their life in a bigger way than it could do if they only rocked Warzone once a week. By giving you a raid assignment for doing other things, you might just be organically doing the other things and go, oh, I got a raid assignment. Well, I have that now, let's give it a go. But there is nothing in the game's formula, in the game's menus, in the game's UIs, just anywhere in general, which actually does the work of the carrot on stick here. You get the raid assignment key, but you never know it. The carrot is invisible. It's there, you just can't tell. And for the people that do know specifically that they want to do a raid in that moment, isn't it just a bit annoying to have to do a different activity first? It means that I jumped into that Warzone match and I was not enjoying a game of Warzone. I was just trying to get top 20, mindlessly almost, because I wanted the raid assignment key. The Warzone match itself became non-existent in my mind. And I think that this one goes both ways. You could say, well, if I died, for instance, then maybe it would have just upped the stakes for my next game and I would have been more motivated to try and do well. But for me, it didn't feel like that. Maybe it could for someone else. Another possibility for why they're there is that it's prestigious. You have to complete some other objective and only then do you get the key. That might mean that you are trying to put a team together for it, for example. You invite a friend in and your friend has the key and you're like, oh my God, you legend. Thank you so much. Except no one is going to ever say that because those keys are just not hard to get. Like placing top 20 in Warzone is not that big big a deal. You can just lie down in a bush in the center of the circle pretty much, and in 1 or 2 tries, you'll get your raid assignment. So the prestige there doesn't really play into it, I don't think. And similarly, once you get it, then on top of that, you don't really feel accomplished for having done that. It's just like, oh, great, I've finally kind of done the useless farming of a raid assignment almost that I needed to do in order to just play the part of the game I wanted to play. I also don't think that it adds any value in terms of replayability. Like, let's say I want to jump onto the raid again in 2 weeks' time. In order to do that on stream, I'm going to have to play a game of Warzone first. And if you jump in with a squad one night and you don't succeed, but then your buddies can't play for another 10 days or something, your raid assignment expires. So then you have to just grind one out all over again without even having completed it that first time. And I don't know what that adds to the experience other than frustration. It's gatekeeping something that you want to onboard as many people onto as you possibly can as you're launching it for the first time. And it feels like they're working at cross purposes there. Now, to be clear, I actually don't hate the idea of it being gated in some way. I think the idea of making it prestigious is actually really cool. And the possible kind of feeling of completing something really genuinely empowering in another mode and being super psyched at having a chance to go and do this other thing, almost like winning a golden ticket and then you get to visit the chocolate factory. That sounds amazing, but in their current form, raid assignments aren't anywhere close to providing any magic for the player. Zero. With all that said, once you get your raid assignment, you are ready to go. You activate your assignment, pick which class you want to play as, and then jump in, and you're greeted by a long waterway with a couple of enemies on the side. This was in the trailer. It's pretty straightforward. You just push through, you take out a bunch of enemies, you can alert them, or you can try and do it stealthily, and then you get to a computer. And there's no objective telling you how the computer works or what you need to do with it specifically, but there are a bunch of audio cues when you run up to the computer and when you run up to the button that's next to it and all the other things that are in that little room. What you've got to figure out you need to do is match certain symbols that are being requested by one PC with other symbols that have numbers associated with them through CCTV cameras somewhere else. And it's the first time in the raid that you actually have to split your team up and have one person doing one thing in one area while another person does something in a different room, and you have to use buttons to let people go back and forth between those rooms. So that requires the help of another player. And that was just instantly very solid. It's simple as hell, but it's introducing players to a mechanic that is going to persist throughout not just this raid, but all the future raids that we play, I'm sure. And it's done effectively, so I liked that. The verb is established in the player's mind of buttoning someone through or calling out, hey, can you get door for me real quick? Like, once that's established in our minds as a new verb that we can use in the raids, it means that next time it happens, they don't have to handhold us for it. And that'll be relevant in a moment. The computer as well ends up appearing later in the raid, and what you learn about how it works also applies later on. So again, new verb created, new format of play established that the player learns, understands, and then can apply later to great effect. This is all good. And the nature of the puzzle was also fantastic. There were maybe 5 or 6 different elements that were presented to the player, and about 4 of them were actually relevant, and 2 were just sort of red herrings. But what that means is that on the first attempt, it's a little unclear, you go down some wrong paths, some dead ends, and that's fine. But anytime you come back to this now, you're going to know to avoid those 2 red herrings and just go for the 4 that make sense or that matter. And on top of that, you aren't required to learn anything that's sort of homeworky for this. There isn't some external website like chronorium.com that you need in order to be able to finish your Gorod Krovi valves or to figure out what the symbols mean on the ceiling in Origins. No, this one is all information that the game conveys in the moment that you need in order to solve the puzzle. And the puzzle isn't hard at all either, but it is a little bit wordy and fiddly to explain. And I actually really like that. A simple concept that lies at the core of something that has various layers of complexity surrounding it that the player has to navigate to get to that core is the heart of a good puzzle. And I have to say, I really was just thrilled that was one of the first things that happened in the raid. As many thumbs up as I can possibly give for that. Now, once you've solved the puzzle, you move through to a new submarine pen area and grab an air tank, which you're then meant to share between your team as you swim through some underground tunnels. The problem was, in my game, we had a glitch where one of the players just couldn't pick up the air tank. So I could share with my friend here, but we couldn't share air with our third. So we had to restart the entire raid. That obviously sucks ass. Especially when people are going for world first completions, it's a race to the finish, all those sorts of things. You really don't want to have those sorts of issues appearing, and we'll end up saying more on that in just a moment. Anyway, on second attempt, post restart, that water tunnel section was pretty cool. It was okay. It ended up being kind of a movement puzzle in the same way that in Destiny you might have jump puzzles and stuff like that. This was COD's equivalent. You had to juggle that air tank so that none of you suffocated, and that meant that none of you could stray too far from each other, and while you were doing that, you also had to navigate through areas with tripwires and lots of dead ends. And the reason why it was only okay for me is that it just felt a little bit uninspired. Like, it never took things to a new level really, or made me go, wow, okay, that's cool, or made me really have to think. Like, the extent of the thinking in that area was another red button, another instance of the red button appearing, like I mentioned a minute ago, but because we'd learned that verb, we were able to just apply it to the scenario in front of us without really any hassle. Like, it was very seamless at that point. But that's good. That's a good thing. Teaching a player something and then having them execute it in an environment where they will literally drown if they don't drink the air often enough and they stray too far from their team, etc. And then forcing them to stray too far from their team as well, because that's how the doors work. You separate your team, was really good stuff. I liked the design there. But that was just a door. Like, I'm not really getting a lot of joy from getting my team through a door. So it was cool, and I really enjoyed the fact, I relished the fact that what we were doing there was us moving through the space in a way that Call of Duty is really good at. Like, movement in COD feels fantastic. And we didn't have to kill any bad guys, but we still had to use our brains. Awesome. I just feel like it could have gone a lot further. And the whole maze aspect of it felt very contained and a bit dry as well, which was ironic because it's all underwater. Like, you want to be able to explore somewhere like that and find things. That's one of the things that I really remember from Destiny raids that I loved so much, is going down all these hidden corridors off the beaten track and stumbling on things that you actually think are really cool. In this, you go off the beaten track, you stumble around a corner, and what do you see? Oh, it's a metal box, or it's a bed. So, who the hell cares? Just a bit dull. After the water tunnel section, you get to what I refer to as the prep room. Basically, it's a little armory where you can grab a bunch of nice guns. You're no longer reliant on your silenced sniper that you spawned in with, and you're also no longer reliant on pistols you might have picked up, because you've got access to M4s here, you've got Kastovs, you've got all sorts. And you use those immediately to fight through a couple of extra rooms in these tunnels that are now above ground, by the way, that have a few juggernauts in them, and you can get a riot shield from killing those jugs as well. That's cool. It's basically a raid encounter weapon that you earn by completing an objective, and that you then specifically will want for future objectives in the raid, and you can also choose not to take it if you want. Like, you don't have to. You're not forced into playing a specific way. I like that choice. That's awesome. It leads you immediately to another computer step. Same as what we did before, except this time it's on a timer. And I kind of love this, to be honest. There's something about having learned that new verbiage previously, that new format of play in the first stage of the raid, and then having to apply that once again under strenuous conditions with a timer ticking right in front of you and with enemies spawning in constantly. That for me was really exciting. It just felt good to fully understand the problem and to try and strategize a way to execute. And it built on past knowledge in a way that Easter eggs don't always manage to. A lot of the time, Easter egg steps can feel quite disjointed from one another. It doesn't necessarily feel like you do something early and then you use that knowledge that you've gained or the techniques or whatever later on. It happens, don't get me wrong, but it's infrequent, I would say. Whereas in this, that was the point. Like, this was very clearly designed deliberately in that way. And I liked it. I felt a little bit like a hamster in a wheel, just running on the track that the devs had laid out for me, but it was great. I honestly had a really good time. The issue, I think, comes from the fact that you then complete that little computer sequence, you have to defend for 4 minutes, and that's fine, but then it just ends. And it just ending made no sense. Like, we were 45 minutes into this run. They said that this was a couple of hours long, this experience. I actually looked at my capture window just before we got that end cutscene, and I was like, oh yeah, 45 minutes. Sick. We're probably about halfway. And then I was watching the end cutscene like, okay, cool. Like, what's the next encounter going to be? Where's the boss? And then it said mission accomplished. And I was like, No, don't do that. So for all the positives that were present in the raid, it was just way too short, man. Like, I get it. It's the first one, and they've got a deadline right after launch to get this thing out, and that's not going to be easy. But you can't set something up in the way that you did with this, and then have it be the first act of an encounter. Like, part of the point of raids is that it's a whole raid. It's not just a stage. And it kind of felt like this was just a stage, or maybe 2 stages max. Like, if I was looking at this in sort of Destiny terms, because I think it's the nearest neighbor to compare to here, it felt like we did an initial encounter, an initial puzzle, which was the water and the computer, and then we just did a little movement puzzle that got us to another stage, which was, again, a computer and a defense, and that was it. Like, is this a dungeon? Is this less than a dungeon? Is this a strike? Because it certainly feels like it's strike length. Strikes sometimes will last longer than this thing. And granted, it's got raid-like encounters, like the puzzles that you need to complete are raid-like, but when there's no culmination, there's no climax, there's no pinnacle of achievement, it's just, oh yeah, you're done now, by the way. Huh? It's at that point also that you see what reward you're gonna get. And it turns out it's a random weapon case of 1 of 7 rewards. There's also a guaranteed reward, and that's the operator skin for Gaz, or Garrick, from the campaign. And I posted a video about this on TikTok, just saying, guys, for the record, this is how you get Lewis Hamilton in Modern Warfare 2. And all the comments are just, all that work for Gaz? Are you mental? I'm just gonna buy the guy. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, you're gonna buy him? And then I looked in the store, and instead of getting the raid reward from the raid, you can just buy it. And if you buy it, it comes with an extra skin that you can't even get in the raid anyway. So why would you play the raid? I mean, obviously, maybe because it's fun, like, I get that. But your reward for completing the activity is meant to be what you use to show off. It's meant to be prestigious. It's meant to be something you can flex. And now it's just kind of a way to get something from the store for free instead of a way to show that you have completed this really difficult achievement in the game. It's a value misalignment that I worry about a lot, actually, because the fact that there is a reward at all is incredible. And I know for a fact, oh my God, I am so confident that the Activision business unit was looking dead into the eyes of whoever from Infinity Ward suggested that they put Gaz behind the raid instead of just having him in the store. And they were looking that person in the eyes, ready to cut off their head. I just know it. Because as far as the business unit's concerned, one skin, one real good seller in the store, like if 100,000 people, let's say, which in the grand scheme of things for Call of Duty doesn't feel like that many, decide that they all want a $20 skin, that could be couple $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, even more. And so to turn away from all of that money and go, yeah, we'll also let them earn it for free, is something that I know they would have grimaced at the thought of. But somehow Infinity Ward convinced them to do it anyway, which is a win. And it's also a win because it's a PvE activity actually getting you a reward. There's some kind of incentive to do a PvE activity. Music to my ears. We've been asking for this for forever, for so long. Easter egg specific rewards. And here is one straight away in our faces. And the reward is even kind of relevant to what the raid is. It's not just unlocking Samantha Maxis for jumping into a nuclear silo with Captain Price. Like, it's not disconnected in that way. It sort of makes sense that in a raid where you're doing a load of swimming around, you've got Gaz, the operator, in his swimsuit. Actually, no, let me correct the record there. In his wetsuit, sorry, as your unlocked operator. Like, that's good. There's cohesion there. It's just unfortunate in my mind that you can buy Gaz as well. And granted, there is something in the bundle which says that you need to complete the raid to level up and unlock the second skin that you get in the bundle for Gaz. But you do just instantly unlock the aquatic operator skin, which is him in his wetsuit. So just defeats the point in such a big way. It's also weird because if you think about it, what this means is not that we're just getting a reward for completing the raid in the game that we paid for, but what it actually means is that you're getting an incomplete set of rewards if you don't also buy the bundle in the game that you already paid for, because it's only by buying the bundle that you get the raid reward, which is unlocked through doing the raid, of that second skin of Gaz in his ghillie suit. Like, we used to pay for zombies maps which had Easter eggs, and the Easter eggs got us whatever they got us. But now we're paying for the thing that they get us, and the activity's free. so you can kind of see the reward that you should be getting if you'd paid for it, and you just don't get it if you choose not to buy that bundle in the store. I don't know. I feel like that's an unusual way around. It does obviously mean more people will play the raid. So in that regard, it's a thumbs up. It is good. I just feel like for this first one, it would have been nice for the rewards from the raid to just be rewards from the raid, not something that I also had to spend 2,500 COD points on. It's like that feeling when you're in a mobile game and it's like, oh, by the way, did you know if you just spend like 10 quid here, you would already be at level 50, but because you haven't spent 10 quid, you're at level 4 and you're weak as hell. And you're like, man, I've been playing the game and you just chose not to give me the XP because I didn't pay more. And it just feels a bit annoying. That kind of is how it feels here as well. One thing the raid does unlock is veteran mode. So let's talk a little bit about that now, and then let's give some high-level thoughts on the raid itself that plug into our original question, our original frame of whether this means that raids are gonna replace Easter eggs in the future. When you jump into the veteran raid, the first thing you'll notice is there are more jugs. You've got, I think, 2 or 3 juggernauts in that first section alone, and there are more later on as well. The computer section feels more or less the same, but then when you get to the water tunnel, the air tank runs out much faster, but again, because you've already mastered the mechanic in the normal mode, and there's no other threat present in that area, it doesn't really feel like it transforms the raid in any meaningful way. You're having to swap air tanks a lot more frequently, but that's just another thing that you're already sort of subconsciously doing at that point, and so it's just kind of uninteresting. The prep room feels the same, that armory sequence, and then you get to the second computer stage, and oh boy, that's the part of the raid that's veteran. The rest of it, whatever, unimportant. But that damn sequence when you're trying to do the second stage of the computer, you're trying to put your codes in with those timers running out, and the enemies are just spawning over and over again, and it is brutal. And I'm gonna be honest, I think that's a really good thing in the right circumstances. And in this particular stage, those circumstances weren't achieved. Let me explain. In an encounter where something is hard, you want it to feel hard because you're not good enough at doing it to achieve whatever objective you're seeking. You want to feel like you're the problem, but you have some kind of path towards victory that you can follow if you just get better, improve, strategize, rethink, etc. In this instance, you fully understand what's going on, you more or less know the strategy you need to execute, but things just keep happening, which make you feel like that run was just a bad run, but maybe the next one will be better. It doesn't feel so much like you are at fault a lot here, and I think that that is a flaw in the way that this encounter is designed. You see, something I've felt for a very long time that's really an axiom of how I look at the different modes available in Call of Duty and just in video games in general and assess what's for me and what's not for me, and simultaneously what I think is effectively designed and what isn't, is that in a PvE mode, being shot feels infinitely less good than being hit on the head. And I mean physically on the head by a zombie. In terms of the ludic kind of cohesion in that moment, when a group of zombies are running at you, you feel like you are escaping the horde, you're evading the horde, you're cutting a way through the horde, you're sort of shaping the horde so that you can navigate around them, whatever. And then in the situations where you die, presumably you're getting trapped amongst a crowd of zombies, just like would happen in real life if a bunch of zombies attacked you, and you can't path your way out because you get surrounded and you get bonked to death. Now, as soon as you introduce guns into things, which happened, for example, in Advanced Warfare, when you're playing on carrier and you've got to do bomb defusal and suddenly these soldiers spawn in and start shooting you, in those scenarios, you suddenly feel like almost nothing is fair. Like, oh, the AI just insta-killed you, you just died, you just went down, but you don't have the tangible feeling of, oh, it was that specific guy and that bullet that hit me and that wounded me and I bled out and I'm dead. Like, it doesn't work like that. You just die. And I'm not saying that you never know who kills you, nor am I saying that it never feels earned when an enemy does get the best of you and take you down. But it's that cohesion that I mentioned that is much more present when it's a melee encounter compared to when it's at range and you're, for example, backing out of a room, holding a riot shield. This happened to me, by the way. You're backing out of the room, holding a riot shield, and you just die. Oh, did I get shot in the toe? Like, was that the issue? Or was it that my elbow was sticking out? Or was it that something just killed me from behind, but because there was so much stuff going on in front that I actually didn't notice? But no, actually, I know that there wasn't anything directly behind me, so it must have been just down another corridor. But then that feels like it sucks. Like, how to describe this? It isn't a tactile death. When a zombie bonks me, it's tactile. When a bullet hits me from a mystery location in a room with 30 enemies all shooting bullets and all I hear around me is ba 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 da 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 da. Like, yeah, of course I'm dead, I guess, whatever. Ugh, this game sucks. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, that's how that section ends up feeling. That computer section in the veteran raid just feels like there's stuff everywhere, and it doesn't feel like I have a way to outsmart all of that AI, because the player no longer has to use their primary verb of shooting the enemies in order to win in that situation. It's actually, in many ways, about the opposite. It's about finding ways to lean on the way that the encounter is designed to sort of glitch your way through, not necessarily glitching, but finding ways to, for example, enter codes after time has run out, or trying to squeeze in 2 code entries in one go so that you don't have to go into a room, go back out, and then go back in again and go back out again. Or it's about just running away. And that's okay. There is plenty of that in zombies as well. Don't get me wrong. You're not always killing the zombies. In fact, the majority of the time, you're not killing the zombies. But that's sort of the point in a lot of zombies Easter eggs. It's no longer just about slaying every single zombie in front of you. Whereas in Modern Warfare 2, I don't think that they've fully established that kind of language with the player, that there are scenarios where you're not meant to just slay your way through. You're meant to be stealthy. You're meant to just path smartly to avoid stuff. You're meant to use your riot shield to sponge damage, but then you're just going to hightail it out of there and hope for the best. And you could counterpoint me here by saying, well, the section at the beginning is stealth, but it's just so suboptimal to do it stealthily. The game is not teaching you to do anything stealthy there. And when you do it stealthily, which I have done, by the way, it feels like you're just wasting your time, because half the time, the way the AI works means that you just alert them anyway. And that's not a fault of me not being stealthy enough. That's just the game being inconsistent. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. So you then get to this section at the end where you really have to completely change the way you play the encounter. And again, that's a good thing in theory, but you're having to change it because the normal way you'd play it isn't fun, because the AI just feels ridiculously overpowered and they endlessly spawn and you can't even get a breather. And the way that you switch to that new method of playing it still doesn't feel fun. Sponge some damage, run out of the room, hope that I don't get a bullet to the ankle and just die because of that. It's going to be a difficult problem to fix this, and I suspect that we're going to feel this way in future raids as well. Because ultimately, like I said, there is that cohesion with zombies where you feel like a death is earned in a little bit more of a significant way, I think, compared to this, where a stray bullet can catch you and you're down, and that's it. It's just the end of a run. Maybe you'll just reset and try again. That said, the defend step after this computer step is a lot better. The point is to kill everything at that point. Like, the game is not asking you to do an other objective, some secondary mission. It's just asking you to survive. And the challenge is for the player to use their primary verb, shooting, to take everything down and survive by association. And I think that's why it feels better. You're being asked to do something in spite of the options the game has provided for you, whereas in the defense step, you're being asked to do something which the game specifically offers you on a platter every single time you jump into it. And the pacing and the flow of the encounter as well, and the way that the enemies spawn in and what spawns where, the juggernaut spawning down the corridors and stuff, the bomb drones flying overhead, feels really good. So that defense step, that kind of lockdown, fantastic. Just think that they need to try and maybe slightly tweak the way that they approached the encounter before with the computer. But that said, I like things being difficult, so I'm not complaining that it's just hard. I'm complaining that it's hard for the wrong reasons, or it's hard in the wrong way. You then complete the veteran raid, and what do you get? Well, you get a blueprint, which is already part of the normal raid rewards. It's just guaranteed in the veteran raid. So I guess that's cool. It's like having a Vex Mythoclast be a guaranteed drop from a hard mode raid in Destiny. I'm just translating it to that verbiage. I'm not saying that's how that works. And I think this is a missed opportunity, to be honest, because that blueprint, when you actually boot up the game and put it on in the firing range, looks awful. It's like they've taken the, Bryson 800 shotgun and just made it greasy and then released that as a blueprint. So there's really no incentive to want the blueprint in the first place. And so beyond your first completion of the normal mode raid, you don't really have incentive to keep playing it for a reward because you've got gas at that point, and the blueprint is the best of the rest of the rewards. Like the other rewards are a calling card or a loading screen. So the fact that the blueprint's bad means that you're not really that incentivized to replay the normal one, and the hard mode is completely pointless because that just guarantees the blueprint that, once again, you don't even want anyway, and you could have already got it from playing normal. So again, in terms of the carrot on stick here, I think they've missed the mark. I think what would have probably been a more effective way to roll this out is to just drop normal mode, wait 2 weeks, and then release some other blueprint in the hard mode and make it exclusive to the hard mode. Zombies players have been saying this for generations now. You just need to make it feel tied to the raid in some way and actually make it cool. And they kind of succeeded in the first half there because the shotgun blueprint does have Garrick's name on the side. So it's Gaz related. Okay, that's nice. But the second part's a complete fail. It's not cool. It's greasy and grey and boring. And for a shotgun, no one cares. The fact that Veteran exists is something I care about and I'm really thankful for. But again, I just think that a later rollout would have helped in terms of the hype cycles here. Like, we're gonna have to wait months for the next raid. You could at least just spread this out by a week or two. And that might also give just a little bit of extra time in the calendar to be able to, for example, make a slightly cooler blueprint. Now, one of the biggest complaints that I've seen about the raid is that it's 3-player only. You have to go in with a pre-made squad. It will not matchmake for you. There's no sort of looking for group feature in the game. You just have to team up in advance in a party and then jump in. And so I've asked people a bunch of times, hey, have you done the raid yet? Are you thinking about doing the raid? Are you excited for it? What did you like? What didn't you like? And about 50% of the time, the response is, I don't have friends to do it with, so I'm never gonna do it. Now that sucks because I think that some of the places where the raid shines the most is when you do have to rely on teammates, and not only that, but rely on teammates with mics who you trust and can communicate with properly. It's really not the sort of thing that would work just matching with randoms who have their mics off. But at the same time, I understand the frustration of a solo player who doesn't have a squad for something like this. And I understand from their perspective why they might say, I wish they just release a version of it that works in solo so that you can solo all the steps, so that you don't have to have someone press that red button to open the door for you. I get the feeling behind what you're saying, but I actually completely disagree with the design sentiment of stripping back the parts of it that require teamwork just so you can do it solo. I think that this is one exception to the rule where actually it makes a lot more sense for this to be an activity where you have to have a team. It's meant to be a pinnacle activity in that way, and to just make it soloable would gut it of what's making it most attractive right now. That said, some kind of way to find teammates more easily might be a really cool thing for Call of Duty to think about. This is something that Destiny's had issues with for donkey's years at this point. And I mean, there are entire companies that have spun up that literally just exist to help people LFG and find teammates for their raids. And I suspect the same would happen with Call of Duty if the raids were more popular and if people were incentivized to do them like they are in every other game with raids. But in this, there's no incentive. And they're not that popular right now, so I can't see those services spinning up, which is going to keep them more unpopular because those solo players can't play the raids. So that's where Call of Duty need to step in and say, hold on guys, hold on. We're going to help figure out a solution here to get people engaged. Hell, if there's any companies out there that are building stuff to sort out LFGs for raids or just in general for COD, and they want to sponsor a video or two of mine, hit me up, let me know. But until then, it's unfortunate for those solo players, but I sadly think that it does need to stay this way. Maybe at some point they try matchmaking. Maybe they'll just throw that in there. And maybe if you're jumping into the raid, you've already got an idea of what you need to do, so maybe you could find teammates that know what they're doing, and that's great. It's just that on the flip side, you could find someone that thinks they have enough time for it or something. They're a random, they have no obligation to you. You get an hour in, you're stuck on the last step, and they just dip out on you. And then you're going to be really mad that there's matchmaking. And that brings me on to another massive issue with this right now, and that's that you can't rejoin in session and you can't checkpoint, leave, and then come back to that checkpoint. So like I said before, we had that glitch where the air canister couldn't be equipped by one of our teammates, so we had to just restart the entire thing. Then later in the game, we're on the final step. One of our players stopped being able to control their character. Their controller just stopped working. And it wasn't the fault of their controller, it's the game's fault. This is an ongoing bug. It certainly happens on Xbox. I don't know about other platforms, but the controller works just fine in the Xbox menus, but as soon as you go back to the game, nothing. Can't press start, nothing. They plugged in a keyboard and mouse and they kept playing with that. And then the mouse stopped working. And again, this is not the fault of this guy's inputs, because those input methods work perfectly fine in the Xbox menus. He could scroll around and do whatever just fine. The issue was that the game itself just stopped listening to his input methods. And had we not found a solution for that in the moment, we would have again had to restart the entire run. And that was a veteran raid run, and we were on the last step. So that would have sucked. So they really need to work on rejoining session, people being able to back out, jump back in, checkpoints at encounters, all those sorts of things that other games just have. Also, those classes, Assault, Recon, Medic, that I've been leveling up for the past month or so and religiously grinding out stars for in Spec Ops in order to unlock stuff for, they're useless. They genuinely made zero difference in our run. There were maybe 2 moments where I was like, oh yeah, that'll be useful if you just use your class ability or whatever. But for the most part, you should just play Assault, you get an armor box. That means that you get a little bit more armor, that's useful. And the rest of it's hardly got an impact on the rest of the raid, which I feel like is such a missed opportunity. They should be building encounters which make the player want to surface those separate abilities that they've got so that they can strategize around the encounter design. But instead, you don't have anything interesting in the classes, for starters, like, oh, I spawn in with a stim? Who cares? And then the encounters themselves completely ignore the stuff that you might have unlocked because you can just do it anyway. It doesn't make that big a difference. Like I said, 1 or 2 exceptions, like having a sentry gun, useful, but not that useful. And you only use it once in the whole raid. So I think they really need to work on that. Story-wise, Alex returns, which is going to be good news for fans of Modern Warfare. The problem is, he's not in the whole raid. He's just in the intro cutscene. What's the point? Why'd you show him? And on that note, actually, in terms of the momentum of where the story's going, I just don't care where the next raid is or what happens in it. Like, they didn't cliffhanger me in a way that actually evoked any emotion. They basically showed some missiles. I've seen those before Call of Duty. Like, you'd be surprised, but they're actually in quite a lot of COD games. And they had the classic, oh no, those are big. And those missiles might be Russian as well. Oh no. And then it just cut to black. Like, guys, I've seen the trope before. You spent the entire campaign leaning on this trope. You leaned on this trope for Warzone. You leaned on this trope just everywhere. And here you are doing it again and expecting me to be like, oh, how are we going to defuse the missiles in the next raid? Nah, fam, I'm good. And this connects with something that they said in one of the pre-raid marketing pieces, where they said we would meet up with familiar characters, new enemies, and wrap up loose ends. Now that's cute to say, but you got to be careful because you've just released a piece of content, which that was marketing, and in that piece of content, none of those things happen. Well, I guess you see Alex in the intro cutscene, but that does not count as meeting up with him. I'm sorry. So you don't meet with familiar characters, nor do you fight any new enemies, nor do you wrap up any loose ends. And granted, they meant the entire season, but when the first raid doesn't do really anything to actually progress things, like the story of the raid can be wrapped up in the following sentence: Price swims through a tunnel and finds a missile. Nothing else is needed for that story. So from a narrative perspective, it's really dull. And it doesn't do what it felt like they were setting it up to do. And on top of that, in the marketing, they were like, boss fights, hellscapes. Bro, where are the boss fights? Where are the hellscapes? I see a tunnel of water. Again, maybe they were talking about future raids. Then why were they talking about those things now in the teaser for this raid? In my mind, it's such an obvious marketing error to make people think that future content is going to be present in current content. And Call of Duty is so careful about that stuff when it comes to all the stuff that you have to buy. But as soon as there's something that they're releasing for free, the checks and balances go out the window. It doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, tell them that there's hellscapes and boss fights and all sorts. There aren't, but there will be in 6 months, so it's fine. It's just unfortunate. I was really hopeful for a boss fight, and it really needed one. And without one, it isn't really a raid. There's just some juggernauts. It's like, I don't know, you're playing a Star Wars game, right? And you're a Jedi, and you're cutting through all these droids, and you're like, hell yeah, can't wait to fight Darth Maul. And then a droideka rolls in, and you slice through it, and then it cuts to black, and you're like, wait, hold up, what just happened? Oh wait, was the droideka meant to be the boss? When it was just an elite enemy, it was just a slightly higher ranked droid, just a droid with a different kind of gun that can roll, and that was it. There was no, oh, use this mechanic to take it down. There was no health bar. There was no anything. In fact, the droideka didn't even speak. There was no narrative connection. It was just, oh, it's an enemy and it's dead. But that was the boss, right, guys? Nah. Can't fool us like that, Infinity Ward. Sorry. You gotta do better next time. In some ways, it's maybe actually good, though, that they didn't do something like that, where they actually had a Darth Maul moment, because they used footage from the end cutscene of the raid in the marketing material for the raid. Why? Like, if there had been Darth Maul, guarantee they would have shown him in the trailer. Like, such an insane, ridiculous spoiler. Purposeless. To take something with that amount of gravity associated with it and just throw it away in marketing, the surprise ruined. So they didn't make that gaffe. But the only reason they didn't is because there wasn't a surprise to reveal. And so instead, we just got clips from the end cutscene spoiled, which we don't care about, so it doesn't feel like a spoiler. Again, Call of Duty so often fail to understand the experience of being a fan playing this stuff that they're releasing. And it doesn't feel good to go forward towards a raid, which is meant to be full of mystery and excitement and surprise and delight, right, guys? The industry adage that has permeated the walls of every studio, surprise and delight. And you're here telling us the reward we get for doing the raid in advance, showing us the end cutscene that we get for doing the raid in advance, telling us about the boss fights that are going to be in the raid, except they're not in this one, they're coming in advance. And you're just leaving us like, why am I doing this? And on top of all of that, this game has some really pretty maps. Like, I think Al Mazrah looks really nice, especially if you're in, what's that village? It's like Zarqwa hydro plant or something like that. And the sun's setting, like that MP map, gorgeous. The Mercado Las Almas, really pretty map. But then you jump into this raid and it's just sort of this gray, green, kind of desaturated, horrible looking concrete walls, tunnels that don't feel grand or epic. They just feel like tunnels. And a final encounter area, which again, you just don't really feel inspired by. And that's something that I feel like Destiny does so freaking well, man. You step into a corridor in Destiny and it's just a corridor taking you from point A to point B. But it feels like you are walking the stairs up to Valhalla. You are treading hallowed halls in that game at all times. Princes, kings, and queens are the only other people that have ever been there. And now you're there, intruding on some giant space monster's back door. Oh. And it just feels epic. That word's kind of cringe these days, but it genuinely does. And by comparison in this, it just felt so bland. Which is a shame because I know obviously they can't rely on sci-fi elements to make it cool. It's Call of Duty. And it's not zombies. But there are moments in COD where those really beautiful visuals come into play. The cinematography of the game comes into play. Perfect example, right? My teammate Matt Talixian pointed this out. In low profile, if you get to that final end stage where you're waiting for the chopper to come in and you take off your night vision goggles, all you can see is a spotlight from the chopper marking the area, and very faintly you can see everything else. It's illuminated a little bit by moonlight, but 99% of it is just where the spotlight from the chopper above you is. And it's so freaking cool. You feel like you're in a film in that moment because you've been able to rely on the night vision for so long, and then you take the helmet off just by your own volition, and it's like, oh my goodness me, this just, visually is stunning. Where are the moments like that in the raid? There are none. There was no moment where we opened a door and went, wow. In fact, the only moment that could have been like that was the submarine doors opening, and the doors opening, that animation was cool. But then on the other side, it's just, oh, it's a submarine. We literally saw like 3 of those in the campaign. Whatever. Like, they need to be a bit more inventive with this stuff. And I know obviously that means that they need to make custom assets and blah, blah, blah. And that has a development cost and that takes time. But you kind of need it if you're making raids, I feel like. Because if you're just going through the same old corridors and you don't feel inspired by the geo around you, you very quickly start to feel like you're just doing the same thing over and over again. And that's why zombies maps always look so drastically different map on map on map. We went to the freaking moon, dude, because the devs are trying desperately to convince the player they haven't done this before 1,000 times, despite the fact that they absolutely have done. You're putting a new lick of paint on it in such a way that you think it's a different car, and the player drives off happy as Larry, and the devs get their check. And instead here, it just looks pretty much the same as stuff that we've already seen. Granted, they're new areas, but it didn't feel enough like that. But, little finger wag going on here, in spite of all of those issues, this was a really positive first step. I never expected raids to happen in this game. I don't think any of us did. And when they announced them, my jaw was pretty much on the floor. I was like, huh? This is my favorite thing ever in Destiny. This is my favorite thing in gaming if you consider Easter eggs to be raid-like activities. And to get that kind of experience in Modern Warfare 2 is a blessing. It's a miracle. And I think in many ways, the devs have delivered. It's multi-stage. The puzzles are really well designed. It has rewards. Like, I've bagged on the rewards today. I've said that there's issues with them, but they exist. They're there. There's something for me to critique. So I'm over the bloomin' moon. They have their problems. They have things to work on, but it's going in a really good direction. And if they can work out a few key things, number one, how to get people into the raid, which splits into making sure that people know about it in the first place, not just hiding it in the menus, and giving someone a method to get in even if they're a solo player, whether it's LFG or something else. Creating something a little bit more visually appealing or a little bit more out of the box so that people might see it and go, oh my God, what's that? Like, how did you get there? And then creating a reward system, which is based on the framework that they've already clearly built with these weapon cases, except that they make certain things exclusive or they just tweak what you're actually getting to make it more attractive. You do those three things, raids are going to be enormous. But without doing those three things, there's no way that these will replace Easter eggs. Because with Easter eggs, people already know they exist. They're already attracted to the art style, the crazy new stuff that you're getting to explore in those maps. And while the rewards, the incentives have been the weak link over the years, we're used to that with Easter eggs. So we expect it slightly less, and they have started trying to push in that direction. So it feels like it's promising in that area. So without these three pillars, zombies is not going to get leapfrogged. Also, the replayability of this raid is really weak right now. However, if those things are achieved by, let's say, the end of Modern Warfare 2, and we jump into a year 2 of the game, and they do another 5 raids, at that point, I might start getting a little worried about Easter eggs, to be honest, because zombies has already had a lot of issues in the past couple of years, and it's just not been earning money. And if they figure out a pipeline to make a PvE activity earn them a bagload of money with raids and also maybe with DMZ, then why are they going to want to bring zombies back, which just doesn't earn them anything? There's a little bit of competition there, which I'm genuinely pretty worried about. It can't be easy for Call of Duty to continue the sort of weird dissonance that it has with a campaign and multiplayer that are really realistic and that are all about shooting people and them shooting back. That on one side, and then on the other side, the zombies mode where the AI just hits you. It has the path in its own specific way. It has its own completely sort of separate, but then now interlinking, but still really complex story. It needs loads of custom bespoke art, animations, weapons, etc. And it's got a community that is impossible to please at this point. Don't you think that against that backdrop, suddenly raids sound quite attractive for Activision? So I don't know if Easter eggs are going to necessarily be replaced anytime soon, but suddenly, out of nowhere, there's kind of the beginnings of competition, which is exciting and scary, but mainly exciting. Treyarch are going to have to pull all the stops out for 2024 for their next game. And that is a thrilling thought. If you've enjoyed this design breakdown of the raid with the pros and the cons kind of listed out here, then please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the raid and the design of it, and subscribe if you haven't already for more stuff like this. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.